The Washington Wizards have had a very quick fall from being one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference to not only the worst team in the East, but possibly the laughingstock of the entire NBA. And what makes their situation worse is they have a superstar in Bradley Beal who, even though he has games where he puts up 60 points, ends up losing games with the Washington Wizards due to the fact that they have by far the worst defense in NBA history. What's possibly even worse for the Washington Wizards is that Bradley Beal doesn't really want to be traded. He's even quoted, I think today or yesterday, saying that he wants to stay with the Washington Wizards and build a winner in Washington. However, after they traded John Wall for Russell Westbrook, and we've seen what this team has been capable of through not even 20 games this year, it's easy to see that the Washington Wizards do need to do Bradley Beal a favor and send him to an actual contender. Now, the Washington Wizards, as I said, are possibly the worst team in the NBA. They have the worst defense in possibly league history, and they just need to reset and rebuild. And when you're trading somebody like Bradley Beal, you need to be trading him for young talent and talent that can be, attributed to winning in the future. If you look at the Western Conference, there's a lot of teams that can facilitate a trade. Two of the teams that keep on getting brought up, and I hate that they keep on getting brought up, are the Lakers and the Clippers. The Lakers and Clippers, not only do they not really have talent to give up, that even if they did give somebody to the Wizards, it's not going to be a young player that can actually attribute to winning further on. I don't really necessarily think the Lakers could think that they could trade Talen Horton-Tucker or maybe any of their other younger guys to the Wizards in hopes that they could rebuild that franchise, like many of the other teams in the Western Conference could say. One of those Western Conference teams that you already know by the thumbnail of this video is the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets have a lot of young talent. Not only do they have a lot of young talent, they have a lot of just talent in general. They have a roster and a lineup that goes about 11 to 12 players deep on any given game. And with top guys like Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, they can afford to give up some of those young players that they've taken first-round picks with and, trade them to get a superstar like Bradley Beal to play with Jokic and Jamal Murray. Now, what's even better for the Denver Nuggets is Bradley Beal, in my opinion, is the most cost-efficient superstar in the NBA. Bradley Beal gets paid about $28 million a year. Yes, that's a lot of money. But when you compare him to other superstars in the NBA, compare him to guys on his own team like Russell Westbrook who get paid $30+ million a year, Bradley Beal, in my opinion, is the most cost-efficient superstar in the NBA. Throw in the fact that he's the best scoring guard in the NBA, throwing in the fact that he can play make, rebound, and play a little bit of defense. And again, he's the most cost-efficient superstar in the NBA. Now, looking at the Denver Nuggets contract situation, they have a couple of guys who not only match salaries pretty much perfectly, but are in the same theme of young guys who could attribute to winning maybe later on in, the Washington Wizards' future. Two perfect names to be thrown into these trade rumors are Gary Harris and Michael Porter Jr. Now, in Gary Harris's case, he's a 26-year-old shooting guard who, yes, has probably not lived up to his $19 million a year billing for the Denver Nuggets. However, he still is a 26-year-old guard who's playing behind two scoring-heavy players in Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. He's had a little bit of injury issues in his career, but we've seen when he's playing at his top level, he's an elite defender, he's a great shooter, and he's a guy who can play make a little bit as well. And Michael Porter Jr., even though he's had a little bit of injury issues himself in his, entire basketball career, going back to when he was in college and a little bit in high school as well, he still, when he's playing at his top level, like Gary Harris, one of the better shooters even in the NBA when he is actually, playing at his best. He's a very good shooter. He's a tall, rangy guy. He can actually offensive rebound really well, and even though he's not the best defender, he's still a 6'10 forward who can move probably better than a lot of the other forwards in the NBA, and he can use that to his advantage. Now, after Gary Harris and Michael Porter Jr. are put into this trade, that still leaves about $5 to $6 million in cap space that needs to be filled. And even then, I don't know if Washington would really accept a trade for just Michael Porter and Gary Harris. I think the one name that would probably have to be thrown in there is Bol Bol. For the Denver Nuggets, I don't really think they would care about throwing him in, even though he has a lot of potential and he has shown flashes of greatness. He's only playing about 5 minutes a game. He's only appeared in 10 games the whole entire year, and he just doesn't play for them. So I don't necessarily think that them giving up a guy who, at his best, is probably the backup center to Nikola Jokic, because I don't really think you could play both of them together. Throwing him in, it doesn't really hurt their depth at all. It doesn't really hurt their team at all. And if you're throwing in Bol Bol to get Bradley Beal, I don't know if you're necessarily losing that deal. So at the end of the day, if this trade would go through, it would be Gary Harris, Michael Porter Jr., and possibly Bol Bol thrown in with maybe somebody like you know, somebody to just fill cap space. I don't know who exactly it would be. Maybe somebody like PJ Dozier or somebody like that. You know, just matching salaries, it will be pretty easy for the Denver Nuggets to do. They've kind of set themselves up with guys who have perfect salaries to facilitate this kind of deal for Bradley Beal. And for the Washington Wizards, it doesn't make any sense to keep Bradley Beal on this team. Not only are you not winning now, you didn't win last year with Bradley Beal. You didn't win this year with Bradley Beal. You're probably not going to win next year with Bradley Beal, especially if you still have somebody like Russell Westbrook as the other leading guy for your roster. If you bring in some young talent who are all three guys, even though in Michael Porter's case he's not the best defender, Gary Harris and Bol Bol are both capable defenders in the NBA. And Michael Porter, what he doesn't give you on the the defensive end, he can very easily give you on the offensive end. With all that being said, that's going to be the video for me. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you leave a like. If you didn't, make sure you leave a dislike. Any feedback from you all at this point is much appreciated. If you're new here, make sure you hit subscribe. If you're one of my returning subscribers, I appreciate you a lot. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.